Grant yourself permission. Stop waiting for an invitation from someone else. That is what this episode is all about. And let me tell you, this is coming from someone who spent a good portion of her life looking to others for approval. That's how I grew up. I grew up with a dad that was very traditional and the traditional home with my parents working, my mom working at home, raising nine of us. I'm the last of nine kids. And my dad, who was, again, very traditional, and the expectation was you did what he said. So I grew up with this expectation that the man or the person in authority is going to tell me what to do. And what that led to is a good portion of certainly my younger years really being challenged because I didn't feel like I mattered or that my voice mattered. And that is a big reason why I'm so passionate about helping everyone find their voice. So I want to tell you about a recent experience, which also shows that we are all a work in progress. So if at all you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get there, how am I going to get to a point where I've overcome this idea of waiting for people to give me permission? I have definitely been there and I can relate. And the way that we have, as women, been culturally conditioned, it is so ingrained in most of us. So, a recent example is that I was at a conference in Duluth, Minnesota a few weeks ago. And I was in a breakout group, which had about 50 people in it, but they were really inviting anybody to share. And because I was probably three-quarters of the way in the back of the room, I remember thinking, oh, I'll wait till she gets a little bit closer. But then people in the front kept raising their hands to speak. And I really wanted to share something. Well, it was a really interesting example because even as far as I have come, I noticed myself waiting. And it wasn't until a woman about a row next to me raised her hand that I thought, okay, this is my moment. And then right after her, I raised my hand and I spoke to the room. But I was editing myself in that moment, thinking, why are you still waiting? You do this for a living. This is what you help people with. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is so incredibly ingrained. So I have got 5 tips for you today to help you to grant yourself permission and to catch yourself in these moments when we don't even realize we're doing it. We're often on autopilot. And so I want to help you with that. The first thing that I want to suggest here is swap permission with declaration. And what I mean by that is instead of saying something like, is it okay if I do this? Just do it or say, here's what my plan is. Here's what I plan to do. And then you move forward with that or you explain the plan. I understand that there are going to be different contexts. Remember, everything that I talk about, common sense and good judgment overrides everything because every situation is going to be a little bit different. But my goal for you today, when you think about, and obviously beyond today, is to think about situations when you might be asking for permission or waiting when you don't actually have to. And I am still flabbergasted at how many women wait and expect that there's an invitation that's going to happen. And I can tell you this, most of the time, you're not going to get an invitation. You have to ask for one. If you really want, depending on the situation, then ask versus just doing it. But I want to invite you to think about the possibility that many times when we're waiting and thinking we're being polite, we're actually missing an opportunity to win more open doors, more advancement, more promotions, more business, whatever your situation is. So use declarative language. That's the number one here. How do you swap permission with declaration? You use that language that signals confidence and clarity. So again, you're not seeking approval, but instead you're informing. This can be a challenge because it is so ingrained in us. And I want to remind you that as you start observing yourself, start noticing what you're doing without judgment. Just be curious. Think, huh, that's interesting. I wonder why I did that. Or what other choice could I have made in that moment? This is a great example of how often, and there's so much research around this, that most women need to have 10 out of 10 qualities, or let's say going for a job, 10 out of 10 qualifications they need to have. Whereas with men, 6 out of 10, they will still go for the job. These are things that are important to notice about yourself and ask yourself, hey, how might I want to show up differently? So remember to use that declarative language, like, here's my plan. This is what this is what I expect to do or plan to do. I just thought of a story I wanted to tell you. When I was working at the Gap in their corporate office, I remember I got a new boss, and I had had such a great relationship with my prior boss, and I was really bummed. But this guy came in, and he had very disrespectful behavior. So things like taking calls during our one-on-ones, making me wait outside of his office for a while. So I decided I am done with this. What I did is I sent him an email after our last one-on-one, and I said to him, hey, in the future, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work until you're ready. So I want you to know that that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit in your office while you're on the phone. So if you need to take a call, or if you are not ready for our one-on-one, then I will be doing my work at my desk, and you can let me know when you're ready. That was a great way for me to set a boundary, which is also on this list of 5 things. So I might be getting a little ahead of myself, but I wanted to bring this up because this is where sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. If somebody isn't being respectful, or they're simply, you just want them, you need to show up differently. We can't expect other people to show up differently, but we can tell them what we're going to do. And that's that declarative tone. The second one is trust your own competence. Sometimes, and I know for me, many years in my life, a lot of personal growth work that I've been doing, asking for permission is often a mask for self-doubt. And how often it is that we want someone else's approval, or we're looking to them. I even noticed this when I was starting out in business, that a lot of times I thought, oh, I better hire someone, or I'll need an expert to do this. Or you know how often we disqualify ourselves simply by saying things like, oh, I'm no expert, but, or you know so much more about me than I, or so much more about this than I do. We do these things that sabotage ourselves, and oftentimes we don't even realize it. So remember to trust yourself. And here's a way that you can do that. Make a list. And if you've been listening to me for a while, you may have heard me talk about the celebration portfolio, which is really 2 lists. It's a list of your wins and essentially your past evidence and accomplishments, that you make good decisions, that you do amazing things. Having it all in one place, or at least maybe even the last 6 months to a year, having it all written out is very powerful. And revisiting it can help you, because what you're doing is you're collecting data to show, yes, I do things really well. I don't necessarily, like, I am an expert. I don't necessarily need someone's permission to tell me that. And then the other part of this celebration portfolio is a list of your character strengths, things that you just are because of who you be, who you are, how you're being, how do you show up? Maybe you have a particular warmth, or a particular energy, or a particular style of how you show up in general, and people like that. Maybe you are a particular team player, or you have a very positive outlook, or you tend to affirm people a lot. There's a lot of different things that we don't think of as character qualities. Or let's just put it this way. These soft skills that they say aren't soft at all. They're power skills. They're important. And when we use those, it is so critical to acknowledge them, because half the time we don't realize it. I remember a common thread throughout my whole life is that people feel comfortable in my presence. And I remember when I first heard that, I thought, oh, that's nice. And then over time, and especially as I own a business now, I've realized how important that is as an asset, because not everybody makes other people feel comfortable. So that's one of those intangible qualities related like likability, where people feel drawn to you and it's not something tangible, but it's very important to keep writing these things down, refer to it regularly, because confidence grows from proof, not permission. Let me say that again. Confidence grows from proof, not permission. We've got to trust ourselves. So the more that we can do that and have this evidence, the more important it is. The other question that I would suggest that you ask yourself, especially when you are a little down on yourself or something, is to ask, what else is true in the room? Thank you, Dr. Kimber Del Valle. That was one of the things she said. And she's a growth mentor in my life, and really being just being open to the possibility that there are different ways of being or doing in the moment. What else is true in the room? Number 3, set internal criteria, not external validation. And boy, I have been in the past. Thank God I've been through a lot of personal growth work to get here. But the power of having your internal criteria, your internal, whether you call on your faith in God, your of faith in yourself, a faith in the universe, the power of deciding what you need to feel comfortable taking action and not looking for somebody else to tell you what to do. And I say I was the poster child of this because for so many years, I was taught that my dad is the one, or your boss or your teachers were the ones who knew better than me because they were older and wiser. And it's such that is, I understand why my dad did that on one hand about the respect thing, which is of course important, but it was in the end more damaging because I took it way too far where I didn't even trust myself, which is now why I wrote the book, Trust Your Own Voice, which is a guidebook for women for how to grow your influence through confident communication. So decide what you need to feel comfortable. And what I mean by that is, what information do you need? What support do you need to have? Or timing, not waiting for somebody else's yes, or going for something else somebody told you to do. If your criteria are met, then you move, period. Again, if your criteria are met, you move, period. Be careful about looking to others. And coming back to how I've always been one to hire experts, to look to other people. And the thing I want to tell you is that I encourage you to look to people that are experts in your field, but be careful about becoming, or not your field, in the field. Like, for example, I'm thinking about maybe if you're in the corporate world, you might hire somebody with how to interview better or how to find the best career direction. Or if you own a business like me, maybe you're looking for the best person to market your business or to design a website or whatever it might be. What I have noticed that I have overcome, although still occasionally I see things creep in, is that it's easy to look at somebody else as the expert and then be too dependent on that to the point where you're actually letting them make decisions for you when you realize later, oh, that isn't actually how I would have wanted it. Why did I do that? Sometimes we can get too dependent on others. So remember, your internal criteria, not somebody else's. 4, use boundaries as your backbone. When you stop asking for permission, you start owning your boundaries. I will tell you, this was such a powerful thing in my life. I remember when I left my corporate job first back in 2003 to start a career coaching business at the time. My friends were used to me looking at their resumes and redoing them or helping them with them. And I had to have a big conversation with one of my friends because now I was actually doing this for a living. So my therapist at the time helped me with this conversation. And I'm telling you, I was terrified to do it. But I'm so proud that I did. And it felt so empowering. So what I did is when she approached me, I said, hey, I know that you wanted me to look at your resume. And because that's not what I do for a living, this is what I charge per hour. Would you like me to do your resume for that? And I figured she would say no, and she did. But I'll tell you, it felt so good to say no, or to set a boundary. Let's put it that way. And then what was great is that I had a better solution for her that was still easy for me, didn't cost me anything, barely any time. I said, "Hey, do you want me to email you mine and you can use mine as a template?" And she said, "Yes, that would be great." So I was able to help her and also take care of myself. So here's a couple of phrases that I would recommend that you practice. Instead of just flat out no, that's a little abrupt, although I do hold the fact that no is a complete sentence. And yet, I don't think I'd ever just say flat out no to somebody. It's up to you, whatever your style is, but no, thank you, or no, thanks, I'll pass this time, could be a little more polite. So you want to be likable as well as direct. So here's a couple of phrases to try. That doesn't work for me. No, thanks. That's not going to work for me. Or here's what I can do instead. People love options. Have you ever been on a customer service call, like to, I don't know, your phone call, the cable company or a phone company, and you're calling customer service basically. And then they say, "Unfortunately, ma'am," and nothing good can come after the word unfortunately. I've decided instead, say, "Here's what I can do for you." And that also eliminates the need for permission, boundaries in general, because you're defining what's acceptable to you, what will work, what won't work. Also, a lot of times people look at boundaries as it's keeping people out. Another way to think about it is you're holding fast to what's true for you. You're holding fast, like if you imagine a fence in your yard, it's keeping in what's important to you and honoring that. So, number 5 is to take small acts of courage daily. Oh my gosh. So, courage is so I have oh my goodness, a signature framework, a trademarked framework called the confidence cocktail. And it is the way that I work with people. I have them assess themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 with the different ingredients that are in this cocktail. And it's all about becoming a more clear, compelling, and credible communicator. And the base of the glass is courage, because you have to have courage to be able to take action. And that's where confidence comes. And the way that you take action is by knowing what communication strategy to use for the moment that you're in. And so remember that sometimes you only need a couple of seconds of courage. Take that first step. Oh my gosh, I will never forget how terrified I was to ask Donald Miller, the CEO of StoryBrand, to endorse my book. I was at a conference that he was leading, and I kept putting it off. I kept putting it off. And then at lunch, I happened to be outside sitting by myself on an Adirondack chair in his backyard. And he came up to me and sat down and started talking. We started chatting. It was such a great conversation. And then we stood up because it was time to go back in. And I told myself, "You have to ask now." So then I asked him, "Hey, Don, would you endorse my book?" Well, the courage to ask is the important thing, not the outcome. And I will tell you though, because I might as well tell you what happened. He said, "Karen, I don't even endorse books for my friends anymore, but I'll do you one better. I'll have you on my podcast. And that's going to be even better for you because it'll give you a lot more reach." And I thought that was so kind. So I was really proud of myself. You've got to take courage. I have been told most of my life that I'm courageous. I never thought that I was really courageous, just like you, maybe for all of us. We forget the strengths that we have or the gifts that we have because, let's face it, we're with ourselves all the time. So we don't think we're particularly unique, but you are unique, as am I. And it's important to conjure up that courage when you can. And that is the thing that's going to help you. So think about it this way: choose a low stakes moment each day to not ask for permission and to choose yourself, or to make a decision without asking somebody else. Send the email, state your opinion, initiate the idea, because momentum builds power. Here's another way that you can do this. This is something I taught myself that was really helpful, because many years ago, my boss used to say, Karen, you always come to meetings asking everybody what they think, what we think, and you never say what you think. I want to know what you think. And I remember having this moment of like, I gasped almost out loud, because I thought, oh my gosh, that feels scary. So I just was so used to looking to somebody else growing up for making decisions for me, that it has felt in the past scary to make a decision for myself, because of the fear of rejection or not getting people's approval. So I taught myself to say, here's my vote. To me, what I love about it is that it's diplomatic and it's also direct. Now, you might be someone that's more direct. So maybe you want to say, here's what I think. Or what I think is, those are a couple of sentence prompts to consider. So there's lots of different things that we can do, but I implore you, you don't want to be missing opportunities because you're waiting for an invitation. I want to end with a story of one of my clients who waited for 10 years to get noticed, 10 years to get noticed, and hope that she would get promoted. Well, she started working with me because she knew she needed to do something differently. And guess what? Within 3 months, she created her own job and got promoted. The coolest part is that as I teach others, you've got to make sure that you focus on your audience's needs. Why would they care that you want the thing that you want? So she made an amazing case to her boss, got this, not just, she didn't get a permission that was already, or she didn't get a position that was already there. She created one for herself, which is so awesome. So I'm so proud of her. So keep in mind, here are your 5 tips. Wrapping up: swap permission with declaration, number 1. Number 2, trust your competence. 3, set internal criteria, not external validation. And by the way, you're never going to win. If you're constantly searching for validation from others, you're never going to win. Believe me, I have spent a good portion of my life trying, not realizing that's what I was doing. Thank God I became more aware of it and have shifted that now. Number 4, use boundaries as your background. And 5, take small acts of courage daily. Remember to use those low stakes situations. All right, folks, as a reminder, I am launching something new in January of 2026, which is called the Powerhouse. I know I've talked about it before, but this time it's going to be different, because we're going to be together, 10 people, 10 to 12 people max. We'll be together for 6 months, working on speaking with power, speaking with authority, and leading even better. So you can show the amazing leader that you already are by learning some of these skills to activate your courage and go for it, so you can speak with confidence and clarity in any situation. On that note, have a great day. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.